Welcome to Relatively Weird, the podcast where a couple of cousins get together and talk about everything weird. I'm Kim.
And I'm Jilli.
Let's get into it.
Hello there.
Hello.
We're here to do another one of these.
Whatever these are. Relatively these.
And today, or right now, is a Kim story.
Kimberly.
This story, like the actual story, is one thing, and it actually only makes up probably like 50% of what I'm going to talk about today, because I veer off into pertinent information about what was going on at the time. Okay?
Deep dive.
Yeah, kind of. So, hopefully you find it as interesting as I did.
Doubtful.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, I'll just stop now. So today's story is the Kerry Babies case.
Kerry Babies.
More than one baby. So this story takes place in Ireland, which is probably another reason I found it interesting. And the main story starts on April 14th, 1984. A jogger is running along White Strand Beach in Cahersiveen, which is in County Kerry, Ireland.
Is that how you really say it?
It is.
Okay.
I made sure. And that's, thankfully there's not a ton of Irish words in this story. Because I was like, oh no. This is on it's like the southwestern coast of Ireland. Some people call it like the edge of Europe.
Yeah.
So a jogger's running. And they, unfortunately, happen upon the body of an approximately 5-day-old baby.
I thought you were going to say another body. Go ahead. Yeah. A 5-day-old body. Okay, 5-day-old
Baby. Yes. The baby had his neck broken, and he had received 28 stab wounds.
A 5-day-old baby?
5 days old. And so this is like the thing that struck me most probably about this is that 28 stab wounds in an adult human being is overkill.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even...
28.
And, I mean, the level of rage that would make you do that to a newborn baby...
Or anyone, really.
...is just... I mean, but what on earth could a newborn baby do?
I'm only 5 days in.
Right.
Man. What did I do?
Most of the wounds were kind of shallow. They seemed to be like hesitation wounds. So the person like pulled back. And the wounds that actually killed him were like 4 deep stab wounds to his heart. So the investigation into his murder was basically like a witch hunt.
Yeah.
And it had a lot to do with like social, religious, and political climate at the time in Ireland.
You said it was 1984.
Yes. So if you're doing the math, it's almost 40 years ago.
Wonder how you knew that so fast.
So in order to really get a good picture of it, I kind of wanted to dive into that part of it. So we're going to kind of go and we'll come back to the baby. But
it's a hell of a intro.
Yeah. Really grab your attention there. So we're going to leave that story for just a second. And we're going to talk about Ireland.
Okay.
So everybody knows, I think for the most part, Ireland's history is like long and bloody and complicated. And I will not be going too far into that. That would take days.
Be a whole course.
I listened to the Time Suck on the IRA,
yes,
which Dan, in his like timeline, did kind of a deep dive, and it's complicated. So this pretty much starts in 1922 when the Irish Free State kind of came into existence. I got a decent amount of information from a really good podcast. It's a BBC podcast. It's called The Home Babies.
I didn't know BBC did podcasts.
They have great podcasts.
Do they?
They
Oh,
do.
all right.
It's sad, but I mean, understandably. But I also use a book called Contraception in Modern Ireland, A Social History.
It's very specific.
It is very specific. It was quite a find. We need to understand kind of how deeply involved with Ireland's politics and legal system the Catholic Church was.
Okay.
Even as recently as like the 90s.
Wasn't... Yeah, all right.
So in 1926, you'll love the name of this, the Evil Literature Committee.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, not mincing words here.
No, they got to it. There was no question what it was about. They kind of gave rise to the 1929 Censorship of Publications Act. They declared that birth control, quote-unquote, propaganda was obscene and would encourage sex outside of marriage.
Okay.
So they instituted a ban on advertising contraceptives and books that were deemed obscene, which could also include things like fertility books or like purely educational. And the committee actually said, like, let's leave the wording vague so that you can include whatever you want and it still fits. Mm-hmm. So you know that at this time, so like, again, 1929, families aren't talking about the birds and the bees.
No.
You can't, if you're a curious young adult, you can't go get a book and try to learn about it yourself.
Oh no. Oh no. I'm jumping ahead. Oh no.
So, I mean, they're just flying by the seat of their pants, basically. They don't...
I'm disturbed how this is gonna tie into our 5-day-old baby.
This is just sort of explaining how we probably got here. Like, why it ended up being the way it did.
Oh no.
So in 1935, the Criminal Law Amendment Act, among a bunch of awful things that it did, made the import and sale of contraceptives a crime.
Uh-oh.
So up until this point, people could still purchase condoms, and I assume some pills of some kind from, for example, England.
Okay.
You couldn't buy it in Ireland, but you could at least get it from someplace else. But now you can't even do that.
Sorry, when was... You said 1920...
This was in 1935.
Okay. How do you... Okay, go ahead.
And now we're going to jump all the way to 1979.
Okay.
Which is, bear in mind, just 5 years before this baby was born.
Right.
And we're going to talk about the Health Family Planning Act. So now they decided, okay, you can obtain contraceptives, including condoms. However, they have to be prescribed by a doctor, and they have to be used for quote-unquote bona fide family planning purposes.
What does that mean?
So that's the part that it sounds like the Catholic Church wanted inserted.
Okay.
So the act couldn't explicitly say that only married couples could use contraceptives. But by saying, right, bona fide family planning, who else is family planning except families, married couples?
Yeah.
I was concerned for ladies like us, people like us, who...
The childless?
Well, who weren't married, but suffering badly from female-related issues.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
Who use birth control as an actual medicine.
Yes.
Thankfully, they did write in that adequate medical reasons, you could also get a prescription. Okay. But who knows what that is?
Right. I mean, not to get into today's stuff, but that's what's happening now, is that people are... What do you deem to be adequate? Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So you're kind of at the mercy of your doctors. Mm-hmm. So...
What was the consequence?
I mean, it was a criminal
You could just
act.
go to jail.
You get arrested.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, okay. All right.
So that was 1979. In 1985, so in 1985, it's a year after the baby was born.
And
Not
murdered.
until then, condoms and spermicide were finally available over the counter.
So, up until 85, no one...
You could only be prescribed contraceptives.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah. The 80s, which I don't know how socially wild they were in Ireland, but the 80s were a wild time here. You had to be over 18, though.
Okay.
Right. They could be obtained at STD and family planning clinics, maternity hospitals, and pharmacies, or as they called it, chemists.
I like that.
It's important to note, though, these places could sell these items. They did not have to.
Yes.
So you had a large portion of physicians and pharmacists who still refused to stock them.
Okay.
Because it was, morally wrong, obviously.
Of course.
In 1992, the the Health Family Planning Act was amended again, which meant that in 1993, there were no longer age restrictions on condoms.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, because sexual education and contraceptives were just not a thing, the Catholic Church developed...
Nothing?
So the church developed the curriculum for most state-run schools.
That's definitely who you want to be talking about sex.
So, obviously, women were certainly having babies out of wedlock.
Yes.
Generally, these women were sent to mother and baby homes. These were places run by the state, so like mandated by Ireland, and also the church, generally run by nuns, where unwed mothers would go. They would be put to work until they couldn't work anymore. They were ready to pop.
Yeah.
Then the babies would be put up for adoption.
Oh, no.
It was not, you didn't come home with them.
Could you leave if you wanted to keep the baby?
No. You essentially signed the baby over, like, immediately. In some cases, they wouldn't let the mothers even interact with the babies after, because they knew you were leaving without the baby.
But these people were there voluntarily, right? You would go to these places and...
Essentially.
Okay.
But it's what your family felt like they had to do.
Right.
Because, you're bringing shame to our family. You're a fallen woman. And so they sent you to these places. And they'd tell people, like, she's getting treatment somewhere, she's ill, whatever. Everybody probably knew.
Yeah. Was this... I don't know if you know, was this only happening in Ireland, or was there, like, other places that you know of that had this? Like, even in the United States, was this, like, a thing?
So, I know. I have heard stories from people whose parents had babies out of wedlock here. Yeah. And they did go elsewhere to give birth, but they got to keep the baby. So I don't think it was... Certainly here, I don't necessarily think it was the same. Because we separated church and state so early.
That's true.
So the babies are put up for adoption. The women would go back to their old lives. These homes were in existence from 1922 to 1996.
Wow.
Ish. Some places told me 1998, but I saw 1996 more. Mm-hmm. So I definitely recommend the Home Babies podcast. They deep dive into a particular home. The story is they talk to survivors. It's very interesting. But an investigation was done into the mother and baby homes, and it was determined that about 15% of the children died while they lived there. Or, so they were stillborns. Okay. There were babies who died right after. There were young children who got sick and died. So that means about 9,000 kids. Many of their remains have yet to be found. There's, no record of burials. And at the remains of home in Toome, Ireland. Remains were discovered in what is believed to have been a septic tank.
Oh.
But it was like a really big septic tank. So
okay.
it was like 20
Jeez.
chamber. I more so say that to tell you, like, I don't know that they know how many children are buried in it yet. It's massive.
There's too much tank real estate to figure that out.
It's like 20 chambers or something.
Oh, boy.
Not only did these babies not get proper burial, but the separation of mothers from their children was sanctioned by Ireland for over 70 years.
Yeah, horrific.
So let's bring it back now. All of that is just supposed to, like, give you a picture of how the story developed the way that it did. I think it was an important way to look at this. I don't think you have to be, like, worried. I mean, it's not great.
Ain't great.
We're going to go back to the baby on the beach. The undertaker who buried him, because his identity was basically never discovered, christened him Baby John. So that's what we're going to call him.
Okay.
No. All right. So the Garda, the Irish police, they're questioning women all over the area. They're trying to find... One woman said it felt like they were questioning basically any woman of childbearing age.
Wow.
To find somebody who'd recently given birth. They figured if we find the mother, we find the killer. Either it's her or she knows who did it.
Right.
Kind of deal. Through the use of recent patient registrations at maternity hospitals, they find a woman named Joanne Hayes. Joanne's 25 years old. She had recently given birth, actually April 13th, so like a day before the baby was born. I don't know. The most recent article I found actually had Baby John's age. Before that, I don't think they were super clear on how old he was. So I would suppose that if they thought she gave birth on the 13th, the baby was found on the 14th, that was feasible.
Okay.
So basically think at that time, they don't really know that he's 5 days old. They just know he's a newborn.
Yeah.
Okay. She didn't have a baby. She gave birth on the 13th, but there's no baby. She lived in Abbeydorney, which was like a couple hours north of Cahersiveen. And the father of the baby was a man named Jeremiah.
Trust
Jeremiah. She met him through her work. He was married.
Of course. See, I knew.
Shockingly, they broke up before the baby was born. So she gave birth on her family's farm, and it's unclear whether the baby was stillborn or if he died shortly after birth. And because we don't super know that was part of what the Garda kind of clung on to. They felt like they couldn't determine if she killed her baby or if it just died. But anyway, she buried him on the farm.
Yeah.
Okay. So the police are like, we need to talk to this lady. So they interview her. She's insisting, I'm not his mother. I'll show you the baby that I gave birth to. I buried him on the farm. But they were not interested.
Really?
Why? I don't know.
All right.
Despite how insistent she is at the beginning, eventually they coerce a confession out of her by threatening to take her daughter. She also has an infant daughter into an orphanage and arresting Joanne anyway.
What? I never understood why the police do this. Like, don't you want the truth?
Yes. I don't either. So, like, you hear about, we've all seen Making a Murderer.
Yeah.
And you're like, do you legitimately think this person did it and you're trying to get them? Or do you just want it to be closed?
Like, it just... all right.
Her family, we find out later, that they were also threatened with physical violence by the Garda. So they went along with her story, her confession.
Wow.
She's taken into custody. She goes into a psychiatric hospital. They don't just take her to jail. She finally convinces the Garda, go to my farm and exhume my baby.
Yeah.
And they do. And they're like, cool. You obviously gave birth to twins.
That doesn't make any sense.
No.
So, hang on.
Yes.
Was there, like, DNA testing at this time?
It's literally my next bullet.
All right. I knew.
So it is 1984. And DNA, unfortunately, is not as useful as it is today. So all they could really do was compare blood types.
Okay. Oh, that's...
Right.
Everybody has a...
In her case, though, Joanne, Jeremiah, and their baby all had type O blood.
Yeah.
So incredibly convenient that Joanne and Jeremiah had the same blood type, I would think. And baby John had type A.
And you can't... There's no, like... Because isn't O recessive?
I believe it's one of the more...
So you would have to have...
Right.
Yeah. Whoa, well...
Beautiful.
Right? Am I right?
Scientifically, there's no way she's...
Yeah, okay.
You would think. You would think.
Oh.
Surely, this is enough. The Garda should let her go.
Yes, okay. Yes.
Scientific proof.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
And they say, oh, no. She must have experienced heteropaternal superfecundation, which sounds like a really long swear word, but it is not.
So, before you tell me what that is, isn't it, like, you know, like cats can be impregnated?
Jillian, stop reading over my shoulder.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what on earth is superfecundation, you ask?
Other than a swear word, yeah.
So, superfecundation, I think that's how you say it. I'm just, somebody, if people are like, this woman's an idiot. So it is when more than one sperm gets through and each of those sperm fertilizes a separate egg.
Right. Now, isn't that... It's very rare in humans, right?
Pause. Homopaternal superfecundation leads to fraternal twins.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So two of the same man's sperm
That
impregnate eggs.
Yeah, but that makes sense. It's like your body's... The first, whatever, hetero something.
Paternal.
Yeah, but your body's already like, oh, I'm pregnant. I don't have room for another, you know? It would be more...
Yes, certainly it would be a lot less likely. And then, so yeah, that's how we get fraternal twins, same dad, 2 sperm, 2 eggs. Heteropaternal occurs when 2 different men's sperm each fertilizes an egg. And I did read, which I feel like I should have known this because I am a woman and I should be aware of what's going on in my body, but sperm can live in your body for a really long time, like 48 hours or something.
I think, so with humans, it's only like a few days or whatever, but I had heard, so I have crested geckos, and if a female is with a male, I think it's up to like a year, the sperm can live in their body for however long, and they can produce babies.
Surprise.
Yeah.
That's horrible. So it is possible. It's not common.
It's not probable.
It's not probable.
In this situation.
Another theory that some people threw out is that decomp actually changed baby John's blood type.
How?
I don't know. I did not look into the science of that.
Like,
I think in 1984 they maybe thought that.
Right.
So you didn't know you're getting a history class and a science class today.
Biology.
There was no proof of either of those things. They couldn't prove it, so Joanne's charge ended up being thrown out. Then we have the creation of the Kerry Babies Tribunal. It was put together to assess whether or not the Garda handled the case appropriately.
No. Spoiler alert. No.
Get ready to get mad. There had been complaints lodged against them as to how they treated the people involved. So not only were there like accusations regarding physical and emotional harassment, but her reputation was unnecessarily just dragged through the mud publicly.
Yeah.
Intimate details were divulged to people.
And they exhumed her baby. Like, she didn't
Right.
see that.
Unfortunately, at the time, the Garda was not found to have committed any transgressions.
Oh no, shocker.
Right. But what it also didn't do, so the tribunal was never able to say, this is why, if there was no coercion, like we're claiming, why would an innocent person and her family confess to something so horrible? And they had no explanation for that.
Because you threatened her other children.
But that's the thing. They're saying, oh no, they didn't coerce her. That's not coercion.
So,
that's perfectly valid.
I don't know if you know, at the time where they were putting this on like tape, right? Like you can, like now we have on video confessions, but were they like recording confessions?
I am not sure. I did try to find like police reports or something like that, but I think...
I mean, I suppose they wouldn't threaten her on the record, right?
You'd think so, but think about the things we've seen now. Like, you as a normal person hear what's happening and you're like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, the police think it's perfectly valid.
Okay.
So we're jumping forward 34 years. Nothing happens in the case until 2018. They finally retested Joanne's DNA against baby John's. Because now it's 2018 and we have the ability to do that. Finally. And they found conclusively that she could not possibly be his mother.
And so now we have a murderer that never got brought to justice.
34, yes. You're going to be even madder. This is going to end very shortly.
Oh,
and
no.
I know. So the Garda reopened the case and they finally expanded their investigation. Joanne and her family finally received an apology from the state in 2020.
Great, thanks for the... What is the apology? Is it just like, oh, sorry. Like I need...
You've lived the last... Now this is 2020, so what, 36 years of people thinking you're murder.
More than an apology, but...
Well, though none of the Garda have been charged with anything, the family did receive some sort of undisclosed financial compensation.
I mean, it's
Again,
the least you could do.
Right. Not enough. In September of 2021, baby John was exhumed again.
Oh, God,
I know.
John.
So that another examination could be done for further evidence. They also, yes.
But I have a question. Sorry.
Yes, of course.
So clearly he doesn't have any tissue left. How do they just like keep it from the 80s? Can you do that?
I think they can.
Okay.
But they're also, I think, doing further examination of like his injuries or like, I guess, his bones.
Sorry, I don't know if you know the answer, but it just...
I believe there's DNA in bone marrow, though.
Yeah, but
right?
wouldn't bone marrow dry up after a while? I'm asking a lot of...
You're asking a lot of scientific questions that I didn't look into.
It doesn't really... Just, yes, I believe you. They tested his blood. Okay.
They also conducted DNA sampling in the community.
Oh.
Imagine that.
You're still sticking around? Like, even if you murdered a baby, you're like, I got away with it. I don't need to move.
You, hopefully.
Okay.
So, a couple people were actually arrested. In March of 2023, the Garda announced 2 arrests, a woman in her 50s and a man in his 60s. So, I mean, like 30s and 20s in 1984, right?
Yeah.
They were determined to be baby John's parents.
No.
So they DNA tested a relative, somebody that must have been related to them, and determined, like, okay, baby John is a relative of this person.
Okay.
That's how they found their parents.
Oh, yes, all right.
Even though they know that they are his parents, they have been released. So I have no idea what sort of information was gleaned from these people because it's an active investigation. They're not releasing any of that. But there is thought to be another man whose identity has not been released who would have game-changing information. Amazing.
Okay.
He's dead.
Ah! By who?
He died sometime in the last, 5-ish years. And the investigation is still active today.
So are they just let go for now and then they'll come back? Or are they like, well, it was a long time ago?
I mean, I am... No, I don't think they think that the parents killed baby John. I don't think they... Or if they do, they can't hold them right now.
Okay.
But they're also not saying because it's an active investigation. So I don't know if they're trying to find people who knew this man and hope that he confessed something to people. I'm not super... That's you have a case with very little evidence. Right? This baby's just on the beach.
So I don't know if that's what's concluded, but why would anyone... There's lots of ways you can kill an infant, and stabbing them 28 times is overkill. Yes. That's a bad pun. It's not a pun.
No, that's what people... Yeah.
Yeah, that's... Why would you do that?
So, I don't know. There's, people are assuming it was an affair and maybe somebody's husband.
Times though?
I don't know. And that was my point at the beginning. Who... This isn't just your average everyday person that can stab a newborn baby 28 times. Just as a note. So baby John is buried in a cemetery. Unfortunately, recently, his grave has been vandalized, attacked. Somebody said, quote unquote, attacked recently, over and over again. But there is a woman.
Who was it?
There's a woman who her dad was actually the undertaker that christened him and buried him. Mm-hmm. And she goes to the cemetery and tends to his grave and stuff. And, but yeah.
Why was it an attack? Who? Why?
Who would do that?
A person who would stab a baby 28 times.
I mean, well, and then you have to, some people think there's a strong possibility that the person who did it died.
Damn.
And I don't know if they think this man who we know has passed away, if he did it,
right,
or if he just has pertinent information, or
Why would you tell me such an inconclusive story?
I know, Kimberly? I hate those.
That's awful.
It's a bummer, and this was what I was saying earlier, I struggle when I look for topics, and I'm like, is this relatively weird?
It's just sad.
It's sad, but also I think it's incredibly fascinating.
The psyche part of feeling compelled to do that to an infant.
Right. And if, number one, is the social aspect of what was going on at the time the
part
reason
of the problem, yeah.
It was so difficult to find the mother in the first place. When these women were pregnant, they didn't tell people. This wasn't oh my God, guess what? No. You're hiding it until you can't hide it anymore. It's just... And then, was the social aspect part of the motivation to kill him, too? So, it's just multifaceted.
I just have a problem. Obviously, everyone should have a problem, but the manner in which it was done,
right?
This is gruesome.
This feels like sort of uncontrollable rage.
Yeah.
Somebody just lost their fucking mind.
And that's so sad because if the mother wasn't the one who murdered the baby, you know, her baby is just taken from her and then meets a terrible end.
Right. And then you're wondering, did she not tell anybody because she wasn't supposed to be pregnant in the first place, so she shouldn't have had the baby? And then, you know, how is that person related to her? Was an important man in her life? Which, obviously, throw him out. Yes. If that's fine. But
throw the whole man out.
But, how could you at the time? In her mind, maybe.
I mean,
there's so much speculation.
She might have been really young, or somebody, like, was he like a product of like incest, or, you know, something that's shameful normally to society. Ooh. Mm-hmm. I hate it. Thanks.
So, I know. But hopefully, I mean, maybe I'll be doing like a update in the future. Hopefully. I'm just glad that, you know, despite the circumstances, that the community kind of came together. One woman said that school children would go to Baby John's grave and like sing. And so they've kind of
he's like
taken
a
this poor baby
celebrity sort of.
That, well, and that nobody, I mean, somebody didn't care about him or
in life,
yeah. That the community's kind of embraced him as their own, which is, I mean, heartwarming. It's
bummed me out.
Well, you deserve it after last time.
That's debatable, but no, that's
horrible.
I know, that was a bummer too.
We don't know if it'll be last time where it lands in the release world.
True.
But
no, this cannot be first. This will not be first.
No, Christ. This and the radiation one are later on.
Yeah. We've got some people on board at least.
I don't plan to talk about children very often, but this just struck me because of, I don't know, we also look at Ireland as like this. It's just good to remind ourselves, you know, how long it took them to kind of catch up.
Yeah.
But it's a great place now. I love it. I'd live there if I could.
I mean,
that's the other benefit of listening to the Home Babies podcast.
Does they talk about babies? Like, what do they talk about?
It's not graphic or anything. It's sad. You kind of have to.
I don't want to be bummed out.
But it's
that's okay.
Very interesting.
And many podcasts have many listeners that, if you want to listen to whatever you want, I'm not saying don't listen to them. I'm just bummed now. I don't know what to do with myself.
Well, no. So hopefully we have an update later, but
a positive one, hopefully. I mean, I don't know how positive. Yeah. Justice, I guess.
Exactly. Yes, that's all you can really hope for at this point.
Cool. Well, great. Let's go see what Joe made for dinner.
I mean, would justice also be like you find out that the person who killed him died like a painful, slow death?
No, I want them to like rot in prison or somewhere. No, I know. I don't know what a fitting punishment would be.
Well, that's that on that then. That is the Kerry Babies case.
Okay, great. Goodbye then.
Jilli's gonna go try to recover.
Yeah.
We'll let her.
Thanks for listening to Relatively Weird. If you like what you hear, make sure to leave us a review and follow us on your podcast player of choice. You can also find us at Relatively Weird the Pod on Instagram. If you have any stories you'd like us to talk about, send us an email at relatively weirdthepod@gmail.com. See you next week.